All right, so now we are live. Good afternoon, Isn't It Romantic Book Club? My name is Diana Muñoz Stewart. I write romantic suspense for The Strong of Heart, the third book in my Black Ops Confidential series. The Cost of Honor is out now. I am so excited to be able to talk to Maria and Ro about paranormal romance today. We're going to have lots of fun, and I will let them both introduce themselves first. So, Maria.
Hey there, everybody. I should have brought my book, but my college-age son is using my little study for his classroom, so I'm afraid I don't have it with me. I write shifter romances where the protagonists are first and foremost wolves. They're not men trying to keep their bestial selves under wraps. And the first one was called The Last Wolf.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah.
And it was a double Rita finalist and was a Best Book of the Year, Amazon and Library Journal.
It was a fantastic book.
Hi, I'm Ro, R.L. Merrill. I write all kinds of stuff, but I was a horror fan before I started reading romance, and I started reading romance and paranormal. So, because it just kind of was like, I love monsters, and now it's monsters in love. Like, this is great. Let's see. My latest single release was, if I can get it in the right part, Healer, which is it's a supernatural suspense with romance. It's the first in a series that's set at a boarding school for children who are victims of trauma and who develop a little something extra as a result. And so it's about a woman who goes to work there to kind of protect the children. And this month I was part of a horror anthology, Victorian horror, which is my first time. Well, I've written historical horror before, but this was like legit with this horroraddicts.net organization that like, these are legit horror authors. So it was like, yeah. And it has, romantic elements, but it's definitely not a happily ever after necessarily. So that was different.
So how would you define paranormal romance?
I mean, I always have a little bit of trouble between urban fantasy and paranormal because I often think that there are overlapping elements.
I think you're right, yeah.
But for me, paranormal, para means beside, so it's beside normal. And I always think of it as being normal's wingman. So it's like the person who's sitting in the passenger seat watching normal drive and make an idiot of itself. I like what Rose says about loving monsters. I mean, what I like about monsters is that they are the ultimate outsiders. I actually, empathize with them. So the monsters get a chance to look at us and at who we are. But I find it confusing because urban fantasy has doesn't necessarily have anything to do with urban. And as far as I can tell, stop me if you think I'm wrong, it has to do with a continuing story that goes on in several volumes. It seems to be. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that when you align with someone who is an outsider, it really does give you a unique opportunity to kind of turn the camera on yourself, to kind of look at your society and examine it from different eyes. So that's a lot of fun.
Right. I think that's why I like it. I don't know about you, Ro.
Yeah, definitely, the outsider part of it too. And I guess the way I would describe it is it's outside the normal realm. So that's kind of how I look at paranormal romance or paranormal is anything that's outside what we consider to be normal, right. Or secular or occurring in everyday. Most people accept that this is what's normal, right? Because I guess, and I know some people think paranormal romance is only shifters and vampires and fae and that kind of stuff, but I look at it as, it can be any sort of, energy that's not necessarily what the normal human experience is.
Right. So, but would you think that it has to be within the normal context? Because I think in other words, it has to be within a society that we can recognize, because if it goes too far beyond, then you're really in fantasy.
That's really interesting, because most of the stuff that I've read lately, I think about what I started with, like the Suki-verse and, the Black Dagger Brotherhood and all that stuff. Definitely those are humans kind of going into another world and kind of seeing that. But so much of what we call paranormal romance now is like battling shifter clans, and they're set in the normal world, I guess, but they're living in the shadows or whatever and having this secret war, but it doesn't always involve a human coming into the situation. So that's interesting, because I think people don't differentiate it that way, but I see what you're saying.
Right. I think, Diana, in some ways, it's like you've got these worlds where there are people who sort of occupy the interstices, the shadow worlds. It's almost like your books, when you write about, you've got all these people who sort of function on a completely different level, who are in the shadow, the dark shadows of the world.
Well, I find that is very interesting. That is a very interesting way to look at it, to see the similarities between romantic suspense and paranormal. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, because I had read this once recently online, when you're doing paranormal romance, do you need to have someone fall in love with a let's say, creature? Because you guys, does it have to be like a human with someone else, or can it be have no paranormal love interest and just be in a paranormal setting?
See, then I think you're talking more supernatural suspense. Maybe that's the differentiation. Because then you have people that are in a situation where there's stuff going on around them, right? That's what you're talking about.
Right, and it is like Supernatural, exactly. Mm-hmm. That television show, Supernatural. Yeah. So there's humans, but they're in a world that, has all kinds of paranormal creatures around them. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the distinction. I don't know. I hadn't thought about it, but because I do write some ghost stories, I guess you would call them. The first paranormals that I put out were about a woman who finds herself in a support group in the afterlife for people who have death denial syndrome. And it's like in a high school gym, and there's this old lady who's leading the group, and this woman is just like, what am I doing here? I have too much to do. Like, I can't be dead. I have to go back and this and that. And she ends up getting assigned an intervention specialist who takes her to go mind her kin. So she has to kind of go clean up some messes before she can go on. And so it was really fun. It was maybe a little
similar to The Good Place, where the people are passed and they're gone and they fall in love.
Yeah.
But they're both ghosts, basically.
Yeah.
But have you done one, or have you read one where there is a human and a ghost, or?
Oh yeah, I know there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that, and I can't remember the name of it, but there was one about a Victorian house in. It was kind of like a succubus, but it was a ghost. It wasn't really a succubus. It was a ghost. It's been a long time since I read it, but I know that.
Yeah, I think the issue then becomes the corporeal aspect. And it's interesting because I participated in Karina Pitch the other day, and I was kind of scrolling along and seeing like what the editors were interested in. And one of the editors said, we have a hard time selling books where one of the main characters is not corporeal. And I was like, interesting. So I think if you do find something where it's a person in love with a ghost kind of thing, that it may be indie, it may not be considered a romance because Yeah. So interesting.
I just love that it keeps like pressing the boundaries, paranormal romance. I read Anna Aguirre and Rachel Kane series recently, where the girl is inside this actually living creature who's a spaceship, a Leviathan, and she is inside and she falls in love with him from inside. And their connection is mental, their connection.
Right.
But I just thought that was so fantastic. And Anna Aguirre did another series too. Like this was an alien romance, and the alien had like none of the accoutrements that.
Well, this is Strange Love. It was so good.
Strange Love, right?
Right, it's Strange Love. But there's another writer who I like a lot who's indie, R. Lee Smith, R. Lee Smith, and she has written a number of great books. One of the best one is called The Last Hour of Gan, and he is a lizard creature, and the sexual organs don't line up, but they still managed to make it work. And then there's another one which is called Cottonwood, and it's about an insect, and so it's about how to sort of reach in through his exoskeleton. I'm not going to go any farther than that.
But you know what? People make it work. Yeah, I mean, like I've read Bigfoot romances before, and you never know. Like I like to read the different things just to kind of see where other people's minds go.
Exactly.
Well, the best thing about it is a creature. It is somebody different, but there are the human connection aspects that we all have, and that's what makes it work. Yeah. So are there certain elements that need to be present to make a romance work for you guys?
I am not a big insta-love fated mates person, honestly. Okay. Even as a PNR writer, it's not my first thing, because I like people to belong to each other, to sort of really create some sense of trust and respect. And that thing where, the fan blows your hair and suddenly the guy's in love with you. And I don't understand the appeal of that, honestly. So I think it has to start with respect.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And I love that. And I can see that reading your book. I've been reading your first book. Like it's been like in between all the other things I have to read. I'm like, I got to get back to Maria's book. But I think that's definitely, I can see that in the way you set up your first couple. Like neither one of them really wanted anything to do with this. But I actually do. I mean, I have written fated mates, and so I guess my version of it, which my versions of things are always a little weird, but I do like that aspect, because I guess it's almost like this is what has been your destiny, but then you have to make of it what it's going to be. Like there's still work to be done. It's not like you catch a whiff of him and he smells like chocolate. So, that's my mate.
I ask you, if you know it better than I do. It always seems to me, though, that when you have a fated mate, one person knows that this is your fated mate. The other person has no clue.
Sometimes I write funny paranormal as part of a group project with Robin Peterman, and they're totally wacky stories. They're super silly and fun. But when I read Robin ended up, her series that we all kind of spun off from is a shifter, the alpha, and a witch, and they both have their mates kind of in their lore, and they're they know who it is when they meet them, but they're not supposed to kind of cross species. But of course in this book they do, and so they know it immediately that that's what's happening, but they don't think it's possible because they're not supposed to be with the other species,
right?
And it's kind of funny because it's like, okay, we're having sex and it's great, but I kind of can't stand this guy. You have to kind of like work all that stuff out. It's like a enemies to lovers, but they are fated, right? Yeah.
So you're writing in all these different, genres. What do you think about world building in so many different? How do you keep all of that straight? Your ghosts and your witches and your vampires, or
vampires is next.
Okay, is it next?
I've been wanting to write vampires for a long time, and I just hadn't had like anything that I thought would add to what was out there. I didn't think I had original, but I'm working on something now. I guess the world building with Robin stuff, that was already kind of set, like the parameters. This is how this happens, and you're born, you're not bitten and become a shifter kind of thing. You're born a witch, so that the rules were kind of set for that.
Right.
I guess just the other stuff, I just like to make shit up as I go. I don't know. I mean, it's fun. I don't know if I'm sure it's something I'm growing with, right? Like, I like to create new worlds. Do I do it as intricate as other people? I don't know, because I think I'm more focused on the characters themselves. So
the romance itself, yeah.
Or the characters and their internal, issues and conflicts and stuff like that. So I don't know.
But I know, Maria, you do a ton of research into your world building, right?
Well, I just, when I created this pack and I decided that they would be wolves and they would be hunted like wolves, you don't need a silver bullet or anything. I thought like any kind of despised community, they would be very conservative and very secretive, and that they would, so that they carried over, they had their own rituals, they had their own mythology, which was vaguely, I decided to base it vaguely on Norse mythology, but tweak everything so that I could make, the story of Toy and Fenrir, and make that from the wolf's perspective, or Garm and make it from the wolf's perspective, which was a lot of fun. But then I also used Old English because I had some knowledge of it. And because I find it beautiful in a very raw kind of way. So I gave them a language, the laws as well. And it
comes across as realistic because, I think the idea, if you're an outsider, you're going to have issues with, the inside group. You're going to look at them with fear, and sometimes, not like them very much. And I think that really comes across in your work, that outsider mentality.
Well, I think this is the other thing that PNR is wonderful for doing, is that you can sort of explore the issues of trust and allowing the outsider in, and realizing that there is strength to be gained by being open. And one can address this in ways that are, not quite so bald as it would be if you were just writing contemporary romance.
And do you think that paranormal readers are more open to just different kinds of relationships, like polyamorous relationships, or?
I don't know. I think if you're into polyamory, you're into that. I think I think most romance readers, I don't know, I'm speaking out of turn. I don't have any data to base this, but I think most prefer that there be one-to-one. And I don't think that changes from one genre to another.
And again, I think there are definitely camps. There are camps. There are people who I read straight romance. I read straight paranormal romance, male, female. That's it for me.
Right.
But I think readers who jump around are more likely to read that kind of stuff. So like I have readers that read my straight contemporary, my queer contemporary, they read my paranormal stuff because they're looking for an author's voice. Right. And they like the way that they can get lost in that particular author's kind of world. And then I think they have other authors that they feel that way about too.
Right.
You know, like I know I read all over the place because I like all kinds of things. And so I think people who are open to reading different things are there for sure.
Right. But then they would do that. But it's not a specifically PNR thing.
No, I think it has to do with the reader in general, like what their parameters are, what they're comfortable with.
So do you have one type of creature that you're more attracted to than, say, another?
I mean, my problems with vampires, I've read a lot of vampires. I was a big Poppy Z. Bright fan.
Okay.
Is that they're ultimately nihilists. And, you know, honestly, I don't like nihilism in people. So I don't like it in dead people either.
They're out.
I mean, I love reading them, but in like actually being attracted to them, I don't want to spend eternity with a nihilist. Oh my God.
Eternity really starts to stretch out. That's a long time.
I know.
Oh, funny. I don't know if I'm more attracted to any one or the other. I mean, vampires were definitely my first love, but there are a lot of shifter series that I go gaga over. Like there are a lot of authors that have created just incredible, you know, the first ones I think I really got into was Bianca Dark. She had her Lords of the Were. I forget what the first book is, but her world has vampires and shifters in it. And I gobbled her books up. And then Holly Trent wrote some really hot shifter books that I loved. So yeah, I'm an equal opportunist when it comes to monsters. My very favorite monster ever is Frankenstein's monster. That is my absolute favorite ever. And so
he's so sympathetic. I mean, it's a tragedy. It is not a horror story at all. It is a tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question for you guys. Why is it that there are so often vampires and werewolves in stories? I feel like they're supposed to be balancing, like one is raw nature, one is ultimate, I don't know, something. What is it? What goes on there?
The ultimate opposites attract?
Yeah,
you
but
know?
Do you think that's true? That there's
I do. Yeah, because shifters represent nature, and vampires are against nature, right? So
they're the ultimate unnatural being.
Right. So how do you justify that together through love? I don't know.
Well, oftentimes they're at war, aren't they? Aren't vampires usually fighting the shifters or?
Right.
Yeah. A lot of times,
I'm about to start Immortals After Dark, which I'm sorry that I have never read. It's Kresley Cole. It's 20 volumes or whatever long it is. And it's one of those paranormal series that I have always known I need to read, but 20 volumes has just been too much. I'm about to start it, and I think there is an enormous amount of werewolf and vampire. Somebody's going to comment and say no, but werewolf and vampire, coming together. So,
well, that sounds awesome.
I think I've read one of her books. It was actually in a writing class. We were looking at bestsellers and looking at how to take the formula that bestseller novel put together to like create your own kind of spin on it. And I think her book was one of the books that we read for that class. It was one of the best writing classes I've ever taken. It was Rebecca Hunter.
Really?
Yeah. And I keep bugging her to do it again because I got like 4 novels started out of that class. It was great.
Wow. Definitely.
If she does it again.
Yeah. Online, it would be great.
Yeah. She did it online. It was through our the San Francisco RWA chapter. It was just, it wasn't so much calling it being, we did literary criticism to kind of look at what are the elements that this author used to create, kind of build this world. And we read the beginnings of the books. And then, we had to do a proximity. We had to do a power differential kind of thing. Like we had different things we were supposed to do for each of the story starts. And it was great. But, so I think we read one of hers to start that book. Because of course we were only supposed to read the beginning, but how do you just read the beginning of a book? That's
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting point is power differential. Like paranormals, you can get away with a power differential in a way that feels really icky.
Yes.
And, if it's just in real life, like I'm not a big one for the boss intern relationship. I don't particularly like that. It always feels to me like there's something potentially terrible.
Yes.
Or the big age difference too, where you have an incredibly successful.
Well, and I noticed that about your romances, there's an equality there, even though they're not similar. Often they have very different interests. There's always this like basic quality between them.
I mean, even like for in the second one, it's a shifter and a human. So, I mean, he is in every way stronger, healthier, everything than she is. But she refuses to be cowed by him. So
her strength is, she has her own strength, her own sense of self. Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah, I definitely think we're willing to suspend our prejudices, I guess, when it comes to reading paranormal. It's safer to read about that when it's not real. I mean, there's still stuff that gets me. Like, there's still stuff that'll happen in paranormal romances that is about, dubious consent.
Right.
I just read a book that I absolutely loved, but there was a little dubious consent that I had to kind of like read with one eye. Like,
right.
Let's get through it. I have to know what happens, but and it was, and again, this is a totally different world too. It was K.A. American, and it's a male. It was called Where the Devil Says Goodbye. And it's set in Poland, and it's this priest who gets sent to this village that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere to do his penance because he got caught with some pornographic material he wasn't supposed to have. And of course his mother is like, you can't ever go there, you're forbidden, you can't go there. And he's like, what do and of course he ignores her because that's what we do. And and he meets this guy who is kind of like the bad luck charm for the whole town. Like everything bad that could happen happens to this guy, and he's out and he doesn't care. And the two of them develop a, friendship and then more. But there's all this like mythology of this god of the woods that it was amazing. Talk about world building. Like I was blown away by this book, but it went there and then it went to some interesting places, but I was definitely darker than what I normally read, but I loved it because it was so unique. And the Catholicism and the, issues between, dealing with your sexual identity and things like that. It was just, it had it all.
Like a great read. Wow. And I think that, I do see a lot of problems sometimes when we have these alpha males that are so dominant that you can really feel that there is, something, not quite right about the romance or the relationship. But I'm wondering, Maria, for your next book that's coming out, I think book 4, the alpha is the female, right?
Right. I mean, not to be a spoiler, but Evie it comes into her own. She's now the alpha. And, in this, it's predicated that being the alpha is not about power as much as it is about responsibility. She is responsible for keeping this group, this sort of last group of wolves, safe and protected. And wolves, and it is true that wolves can become very skittish if they feel that there isn't a strong hand, or
right.
the strong central figure. So like when the alpha is killed, there's often a lot of internal tussle. So she's had to deal with that and finally settle them back down. I think the use of alpha is just the breeding pair is really what it means.
Yeah.
Mom and dad usually.
Right.
Pack. In some packs you have a larger extended family, but it's really mom and dad. So.
And I just saw the cover. It's gorgeous.
It is beautiful.
Thank you.
And Maria, I love that, because I think that's another thing too with shifters is you have some people, and you even do it within your book, but you have some people who they're humans who become animals, but that's just kind of part of the whole story. Whereas your creatures are definitely animals who become human, and but they maintain that animal aspect. And the fact that you have tied it so close to actual wolf behavior was just really, really cool for me. I enjoyed that. Because I've always been fascinated with wolves, and so I liked that a lot because it's different. The first person I saw who kind of did that was Sherilyn Kenyon in her Dark Hunter series, and the mythology behind her shifters is that it goes back to ancient Greek mythology where, this guy made, he made them, he kind of created them, and he made some that were animals that became human and some that were human that became animals, and they hated each other. And it was like, I thought that was cool too, because the characters that I liked the best were the ones that were animals who became human, but they maintained that animal piece.
I mean, again, it's a way of looking, any of these things is a way of looking at who we are and how we behave, and our assumptions, like our assumptions that wolves hunting a sheep is somehow evil, whereas our, eating factory farm pork is fine.
Yeah.
Just because you see it doesn't make it okay.
Right.
Just because you don't see it doesn't make it okay. Thank you. I mean, one of my favorite characters is actually Leonora, who is the human behaviors teacher. And so she's the one whose responsibility to take these wolves, and as they get to a certain age and they no longer are allowed to run around as pups.
Right. You got to wear shoes now.
Yeah. Your first shoes, and they have to get into skin. And you have to teach them what they can no longer do if they're among humans. They can't sniff each other.
I just think that's so funny.
They have to couch things. They have to, it's a way of sort of looking at our assumptions about ourselves.
Right. Why don't we sniff each other? Right. What's so wrong?
I don't know. I sniff my husband. I think he smells great after he's been barbecuing. I do. I go up and stick my nose in his beard, and I'm like, it smells so good. I'm not that far in the book, so now I'm looking forward to it. But one of my friends, Brew Baker, writes Male Paranormal also, and she has a series that's Camp Howl, but her werewolves are human, and then they shift when they become 19, I think. So like when they get to their birthday, they're sent to this camp where they're then taught how they have to behave. So it's kind of
kind of the same idea.
Yeah. And I love those books. They're so good.
Camp Howl.
Camp Howl, yeah. And it's like H period O period W period L. I think the first one is called Camp Howl. It's part of their the Dream Spinner, Dream Spun Beyond line.
Right.
I think it's 3 or 4 books, and they focus on the adults who are there. Like the first one, this guy whose parents were in the pack hierarchy gets sent. He never shifted when he turned 19, but because his parents are in the hierarchy, like he's kind of big stuff.
Right.
And he's out and about, and he's like, it's his 28th birthday or something like that, and he starts having issues. So they ship him off to this camp, and he's like, why am I with all these teenagers? Like, I don't know. And they're like, well, you still got to learn all this stuff. So,
right.
you know, yeah. So
That's so funny.
Yeah, they're really, really interesting. I wish she would keep writing those.
That sounds like a great series. And you know what, guys? We're actually already at 35 minutes. We were supposed to go like 20 minutes. So.
Oops.
I know. Oh, no. I've had so much fun.
To talk about.
I know. We will have to do this again because we
I would love to. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So real quick, can we get what everybody's working on and what's out now?
Okay, I've got my 4th book, which is called Season of the Wolf, is coming out August 25th. And I'm working on the 5th book very intermittently. I now have to work on the kitchen table and that with a household of people.
Yeah.
We snack all the time.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes is, Mom, where is the?
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is tough.
Yeah. We're all pretty separate in our house. I got kind of relegated to my bedroom, which is fine. I'm just far away from the Wi-Fi, so that's interesting sometimes. My daughter's in her room. My son has the patio room. My husband has the whole living room. And we're all on calls at the same time. So it's been interesting. But I have 2 releases coming out in June. One is an anthology with Zio Axelrod and some other fantastic authors. It's called Love Is All, and this is volume 3. And it's a contemporary male-male romance. And my story that's in that. And so it's called I Want More. Is the title, and it takes place in Oregon. It was really fun to write. And then the next book in the wacky paranormal, the Magic and Mayhem universe is the name of it. The next book comes out on June 22nd. We do them in group releases, so there's like 22 of us this time. We have a bunch of new authors.
Wow.
Moon, Chloe Wren, Cynthia St. Aubin, Dawn Montgomery, a bunch of new authors to the group. So it's going to be really fun. Wow. And that is Gator Me Twice. Yes, it's alligator shifters. Yes. Yeah, I went there.
We didn't get to talk about alligator shifters. Come on.
Next time
for sure. Well, that's awesome. And so I have a romantic suspense that's coming out in the end of June, beginning of July. It's called Broken Promises. It's part of a whole different series.
This is a new series.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and it's a serial killer series. So,
I love it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Sign me up. Cool. Post the link so I can pre-order it.
All right. Okay. Well, and I see Leisha Haney there. It says that she likes. She thinks shifters are the sexiest, and they are pretty sexy.
Yeah. All that nudity, right? Like all the lifting of
clothes
and
clothes are always just off. Right. Exactly. Well, guys, it was so much fun. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Diana.
See you guys.